Representative Hinojosa.
Well, first I want to say, I appreciate you lowering the number of TEA FTEs in the bill. I'm assuming
I forgot to put that in my write-up.
there's no
was
fiscal
gonna-
note yet, but it looks like it's reduced. When should we expect a fiscal note on this bill?
I suspect we'll probably within the next, 5-6 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to also echo the concerns expressed by Representative Bryant, Representative Talrico. Also, I think this should be televised or broadcast. I see a lot of my people here, and these are the hardcore supporters of public schools, and I'm so glad they're here. But there's a lot of people who can't make it, and I do think this is significant enough that it should have been televised. Speaking of the language that Representative Bryant brought up, so that's on page 30. And it is my understanding that the 900 million problem is this line that says that we would take districts back to as they exist on September 1, 2022. And so that makes districts have to eat the hold harmless that we gave them for property taxes. It is my understanding that it is not only a pretty large, substantial impact to this school finance bill into our overall districts, but that it also just doesn't sit right. I mean, we're considering property taxes this session too. Last time we did this, we made a promise to our districts. I mean, let me say that nobody wants property tax reduction more than people in my district, given especially the amount that we pay in recapture and that our property values are through the roof. I want property tax reduction just like anybody else, but I don't want to do it on the backs of our students, and I know my district doesn't support that. And I know this is complicated stuff, and this probably was not what was intended, but I'm asking, don't make a liar out of me, because when I voted for property tax reduction, it was with the commitment that it wasn't on the backs of our students and that our students would not suffer a decrease in their school funding. And so I'm just asking, not only because of the substantive impact, but what it means when we go back on our word.
Well, as discussions we've had offline and we'll have, I guess, typically now in public. I believe the hold harmless provision is one of the things we have to look at. And here's what I think, what we need to keep in context. The hold harmless doesn't hold everyone the same. So what holds you harmless may harm me. And so that's sort of the theory, if you will, of the case, as you attorneys say, of why we're working towards that, for more equitable funding to make certain. Now, the desire, be clear, nobody loses money in this bill, in no runs. There were no negative numbers, okay? It was simply that some, including some of my districts, did not reach that level that we were, that I was hoping. And I know from members on this dais were hoping. And so that's one of the things we need to look at, and you have my commitment to do that as we look and model it to make sure. Again, I have to know what the output is. You need to know what the real output is, but what we do. And that's what happens in my office or Bernal's office Monday at 9, or mine tomorrow afternoon, or what have you. We begin to do that. You have my word.
Well, I appreciate that. The fix to this hold harmless that was proposed for this version of the bill would phase out the hold harmless over, I think it's a couple of biennia. And the other challenge with that is, while it may be more money now for districts, if that money goes away and we're obligated, our school districts are obligated to spend 40% of the increase on our teachers as pay raises, what do our districts do when that's not there, right? So that's another concern about about the way this fix is proposed.
Well, and remember that all this doesn't happen, it's not static. The issue is everything's dynamic. You know, when you talk about homes, you have property growth increases, you've got, you know, different student populations. So one of the things that's created, I guess, you know, disagreements in what the bill does in terms of the runs from the different, you know, from LBB versus, almost, you know, the groups, the people that do this, you know, in Texas and do it well, is sort of the assumptions and the data they use. Is it 23? Is it 24? Is it this or that? We're looking forward, looking backward. I mean, all that impacts it, and that's why I think that's what this committee, you know, our gold standard is, you know, what we will do is produce LBB runs, because they kind of call, you know, they make the rules. And we had a great meeting a couple of mornings ago where we got folks that work on this in a room and said, okay, let's agree on what assumptions we're making, so that we can begin to sort of galvanize, you know, the outputs when we make these changes. And I think we'll have better information at that point, and information that we can all, you know, be more comfortable with, for sure.
And I'll echo the sentiment. I'm no expert at school finance, but it is always my understanding that an increase in the basic allotment is the rising tide that raises all ships. And so to the extent we want to do right by all students, I do think, I wonder whether if this language hadn't been put in to undo the whole harmless, whether we wouldn't have seen that play out with an increase in the basic allotment, which I want to also echo. I appreciate it going up from the last sub. I think we still need more money in it. One other thing I want to address about this bill. And I promise I'm not a charter school hater. Y'all gave me a bigger boogeyman to fight these last couple of sessions. But I think the increase that they're getting in this bill is way out of whack. And I'll just give you an example. So we have runs from a group called Moat Casey, right? That's who our school district hires to do this very complicated school finance calculation. And what we see when we look at the runs is that the teacher pay increase from the basic allotment increase of the 40% and the 75% that has to go to teachers, Austin ISD teachers are gonna see about a $4,000 increase. HIP teachers are gonna see a $14,000 increase. I don't know how my school district can compete with that. And so I would ask, and by the way I read the bill, I don't know if they're gonna spend that money on teacher pay raises because they're not obligated in the same way school districts are. But that's part of the largesse that charters are getting, that I would ask that we look at in trying to balance everybody's interests and balance everybody's, what our districts are getting, because that does seem out of